everyone. Welcome once again to the 2019 Wilderness Issues Lecture Series. My name is Joanna Campbell, and I'm the Director of Education Programs for the Wilderness Institute, which is part of the Franke College of Forestry and Conservation here at UM. For those of you who may be coming for the first time, this year's theme is titled Wild Hope: Fearless Risk-Takers, Art Makers, and Storytellers on the Wilderness and Conservation Front Lines. We've been exploring the ways in which people of different wilderness and conservation backgrounds have been navigating these difficult and challenging times. Thank you to MCAT for being here. As many of you know, last week's lecture with Becca Skinner was rescheduled due to inclement weather. I'm actually tempted to rename this series to the Winter Wilderness Lecture Series, but fret not, you will still have a chance to see Becca. She is coming April 2nd, and so she will actually end up closing out our lecture series. So please note that on your calendar that this series will actually end April 2nd with Becca Skinner, in which she will discuss her work as a National Geographic Young Explorer and her efforts in protecting western landscapes. Hopefully the temperatures will warm up a bit by then, right? Also, just an important note to those of you who are taking this course for credit, because there is a bit of a lengthy span of time between tonight's lecture and April 2nd, we ask that you turn your papers for tonight into us a week from today, which is Tuesday, March 12th. You can email your paper to Patrick Kelly. His email address is on your syllabus, or you can actually bring it to the Wilderness Institute office, which is located on the 3rd floor of University Hall. If you have any questions about that, please see me after the lecture tonight. So, on to the best part. Tonight, we have Kascie Herron. Kascie, I'm so pleased that she could be with us here again this year. She was a speaker last year. She was fabulous. You're in for a treat tonight. Completely different talk tonight. One of my favorite topics, humor. So, but just a brief bio on Kascie. She lives in the Bitterroot Valley, which is here in western Montana, just south of Missoula. She works for the Northern Rockies team of American Rivers, where she leads outreach and advocacy efforts as a member of the Montanans for Healthy Rivers Coalition. The goal of the coalition is to usher the passage of legislation that would designate dozens of new rivers in Montana as wild and scenic. In her free time, she can be found on a river, big surprise, and in the company of her 3 canines and her human partner. So please join me in welcoming Kascie.
Thank you. I don't know if it's on. Yeah. Is it? Can you hear me?
Okay, great. Can folks hear Kascie?
Can you hear me? I don't know if it's a mic or just me. Or...
I think I think you're
cool.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. Although I should have adjusted or edited that bio because now it's 4 dogs because we're crazy people. And we got 4 just recently. So, yes, thank you. 2 babies in the house. So thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Joanna, again, for inviting me to the lecture series. I think this is an awesome opportunity to chat with you guys about what we're doing on the ground for conservation in Montana and across the country. And as Joanna already mentioned, I work for a national nonprofit river conservation organization called American Rivers. And American Rivers is based in Washington, D.C., but we have field offices all over the country. So our Northern Rockies work is based in Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, and a little bit into Colorado. And I lead our outreach and communication efforts, mostly in an effort to see more rivers protected in Montana through the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act. And my job isn't just to talk to people, although that is a big part of it. But really to find ways to encourage people to vocally advocate for river protection. And it turns out that this is a really hard thing to do. For instance, many of us in this room probably have causes that we personally care about or are worried about and would love to find ways to help make the world a better place, but I don't know about you, but even me, this is my job and it's what I do, and even I find it hard to find the time to send an email or share a story or write a letter to a congressman or pick up the phone and call. And so a lot of what I try to do is figure out an attempt to implement communication solutions that'll get people, inspire people to take those kinds of actions. And full disclosure, my presentation is not going to be a display of how I've solved this complex issue. I'm not a psychologist, and so I have not mastered the skill or have cracked the code on what gets people to act. But what I can share with you, what I hope to share with you tonight, are the various attempts made by myself and my colleagues to figure out ways to lead people to take action or to voice support for things. And so I'm hoping that through this presentation and with discussion, you yourself can identify for you what it is that compels you to take action or to voice your concern for an issue. So, in order to do that, however, I will have to share a little bit of my personal journey with answering this question. Don't worry, I'm not going to give you my entire life story, just for what, as far as I can tell, why I'm in this room tonight. So, as I told you, I lead communication for a coalition called Montanans for Healthy Rivers, and our primary goal is to see more rivers protected as well in the scenic. And about 2 years ago, I'd say, I was really feeling like I was hitting a brick wall with communications. And I was giving presentation after presentation after presentation. These were fun, though. This was like film tour showing, so that was a little more fun. Attempting to increase the number of people that would sign our online petition or send an email or call a congressman. Or I would try catchy Facebook memes. You've probably seen any number of catchy Facebook memes. More, in my opinion, humorous catchy Facebook memes. Or any number of online promotions and gimmicks to get people to take action. Free toast to sunglasses. Anybody? The truth is, not many people would be so inspired from one of these tactics that they went online to sign up or take action. So it was getting really challenging. You know, here I was thinking, like, here are the fun ways I know to get people to want to act or voice support or do something, and it just wasn't working. So, what was missing? Kind of a personal note. Around that same time, my sister had sent me a random surprise gift. It was an external hard drive of virtually every single home video that we had on VHS onto a hard drive. So she had like watched every home video and digitized them to a hard drive. And I hadn't seen any of these since they were first recorded. But on this hard drive, there was a folder entitled Kassie's Projects. I thought, oh boy, what's this? So I opened it, and the folder contained over a dozen short film projects that I completed for a variety of class assignments. And in that moment, I remembered that when I was in high school, I found any possibility to turn every class assignment into a film project, whether it was Spanish, history, English, biology. I had convinced 3 of my friends to do a mock show of The View, where we discussed the Revolutionary War and upcoming election. So in that moment, the memory of using storytelling to educate and entertain my classmates and teachers filled me with incredible happiness. And I knew what had been missing from my communications and outreach strategy, and it was storytelling. And yes, this other picture of me looking very, very happy was going to Hollywood and taking a week-long intensive filmmaking class just to kind of get back in and see if it was something I really was passionate about. So why storytelling? And because, again, this isn't my professional background, I did do a little research to kind of pull some of the theory and science behind storytelling as a communication medium. And you've probably heard some more of this in other lectures this year. I know storytelling is a main component of this lecture series. But I did want to pull some pieces from a scientific article written by Pamela Rutledge. She's the director of the Media and Psychology Research Center and a professor of media psychology at Fielding Graduate University. And Dr. Rutledge writes, "Stories have always been a primal form of communication. They're timeless links to ancient traditions, legends, archetypes, myths, and symbols. They connect us to a larger self and universal truths. Stories are about collaboration and connection. They transcend generations, they engage us through emotions, and they connect us to others. Through stories, we share passions, sadness, hardships, and joys. We share meaning and purpose. Stories are the common ground that allow people to communicate, overcome our defenses and our differences. Stories allow us to understand ourselves better and to find our commonality with others." Stories are how we think. They're how we make meaning of life. Stories are how we explain how things work, how we make decisions, how we justify our decisions, how we persuade others, how we understand our place in the world, create our identities, and define and teach social values. Wow. Stories are how we are wired. They take place in the imagination. And what I was reading about is that really for the human brain, imagined experiences are processed the same as real experiences. So they create that genuine emotion in our minds and those behavioral responses that go with them. Finally, stories connect us and bridge differences. So here's the connection that whole time. So what makes a good story? So we've all heard stories, some funny, some sad, some really amazing, some terrible, some that leave lasting impressions on us. So I'd like to ask you all right now just to take a few seconds and write down, or even just think if you don't have pen and paper, of the last good story you heard. And if you can remember it, that's a good start. Write down a few of the details, as best you can remember, as to why you thought it was such a good story. And yes, we are going to be sharing. So keep it PG. Should have had weak music. That was like a minute and a half. Was that enough time? Did you guys jot down some things? Who would like to share? You're going to make me call on you? That gal.
This gal?
Next to the computer. You smiled at me.
Sorry.
Well, you don't have to tell the story.
Oh.
Just tell me one thing, what made it a good story. One detail about it that made it a good story.
It made me laugh. It was funny that it actually happened. I didn't think it would be something that would happen.
Okay, good. Who else?
It needs to be relatable.
Okay. Good, yes. Yeah.
Connecting feelings to experiences.
Good. Come on, there's got to be more.
Maybe something that makes you think, has a little bit of an element of mystery to it.
Makes you think, yeah. Some mystery. Yeah.
When the character has like certain ambitions and goals, and they see through it to the whole entirety at the end, even overcoming like errors and just trials.
Yes, absolutely. Some sort of resolution. Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah. That's good.
The person telling the story was really invested in the story.
Yeah, so the storyteller, too, and the way they deliver it, right? Yeah.
The hero's journey, somebody overcoming great odds.
Yes.
That's a good story.
Complex. Yeah. Was there another one up there I missed? Okay. Those are all great. Does that, anybody else? Okay. Yes, it turns out that there are actually a few core elements of a good story. These are textbook, but they're also very natural, as we all just described. They just come up. There's some sort of protagonist, antagonist. Protagonist, a character that you care about, that you want to see succeed in the end. The antagonist that's creating some kind of conflict or hurdle or error, if you will. Some sort of action that starts things off, and like I said, that conflict that they're working through, and then that resolution piece coming back around, and some sort of feeling of just contentment with how it went. Could be good or bad, but it's still some sort of end. So this gets into kind of the next part of crafting a story for impact, and that's knowing why you're telling the story and what response you're looking for in the audience. This is where reading the room comes into play, as well as what medium for communication you're going to use. So what's the question that you're trying to answer, and or the need you're trying to communicate, and what response are you trying to elicit from the audience? This could be fear, sadness, maybe laughter, and I'm not saying that American Rivers, we are in the business of creating fear and sadness, but what I am trying to say is that we definitely want to tap into those human emotions from time to time, because that's what allows us to create empathy or connection to an issue or a cause. That can only be bridged through that kind of emotion, like someone said over here, feeling like you have some sort of connection to it. I think it was you right there. Can you say what your thing was again?
I think it says relatable.
Relatable, right? Like you definitely will connect when you can relate to some sort of emotion or experience that's being shared. Sorry, I lost my hearing. So we definitely want to tap into those as well. And sadness and fear just happen to be a couple of those. So storytelling at American Rivers. And there are a lot of mediums through which we tell stories in American Rivers. We have a blog series, we have photography, artwork, film. Over the last couple of years, though, American Rivers has really utilized film heavily as a communication tool to reach the public about our programs and campaigns. And really we found film to be effective for inspiring people to take action. Again, going from that absorbing and paying attention piece to then actually being compelled to do something afterwards. And especially given the speed at which stories can be told and shared in our electronic and social media world, we found that videos are shared 4 times as often as any other type of story medium. And American Rivers is not the only conservation organization that utilizes film as an effective communication tool. There are a lot of conservation groups out there that are using film to inspire the masses. And if you lived in Missoula even for just a year, you've probably noticed that here in town we have at least a half a dozen documentary film fests per year. It's really becoming a growing avenue to get the word out on important causes. And so the formula for us is pretty straightforward. It's determining the right audience and focusing on what's at stake for that audience, whether it's the future, their livelihoods, the economy. Those are a lot that we touch on for river conservation and river threats. And then, most importantly, revealing what the audience can do to protect what's at stake. So I wanted to share with you a couple of those tools that we've implemented that have been really successful in the last couple of years. Last year we were in celebration of the 50th anniversary of the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act. We used that as an opportunity. If any of you attended the lecture series last year, there was a lot of focus and talk about the 50th anniversary of the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act. I know there were at least 3 of us that presented exclusively on that. And so a part of that campaign was our 5,000 Miles of Wild campaign. And so this is an exclusive story sharing platform where we encourage people to share stories, share their river stories as a way to voice the need and connection to rivers and river protection. And then, of course, there is a sign the petition there. Now, I have a couple links here. I don't want to just, in the interest of time, and I have a lot to share, I'm just going to share with you this last one. Just give you an example of one method by which we can communicate an issue that elicits some sort of response. Okay, so let's do a quick dissect. Let's go through the elements of the story and then how we felt about it. So, who are the characters here, whether you could see them or not? Who's the protagonist in the story? Fishermen, people recreating, right? People enjoying the river. Who is the antagonist? The mining company. Now, we didn't necessarily see any exciting action, but what was the perceived conflict? Loss of fish, recreation.
The river, you know.
Right, exactly. And so, what was the resolution to that?
Website.
Go to a website to take action, right? So, what sort of feelings came up for any of you? I mean, maybe, this obviously has an audience, right? First of all, who's that audience? Recreationists, exactly. People like to fish, enjoy rivers. So if you can relate to that, what were some of the emotions that come up for you? Nostalgia. It's a good one. Yeah. Loss. Of something maybe you like to do?
Something we already have, something that we can go enjoy anytime. And that conveys a feeling of hopefully we're going to lose that if we don't do something.
Right. Other emotions? Anybody get? Okay, good. Those are all really good ones. So the last part being that action. So what's in it for you with this action? And I'm not saying I love this example. I'm not saying it's the best. I'm not saying, there are things that could be better, or it could definitely be worse. But does it do it for you? Like, does that inspire you, that connection, to want to go check out that website? Yeah? And why is that?
Because I love rivers.
Okay.
Yeah, I love doing the stuff with those people in the video journal, so it's making its own audience.
So as a result of this commercial, we had over 10,000 comments submitted for our Smith River campaign, looking to prevent permit application that's been submitted for mining. It's one of the this campaign, and I can't say it's only because of this one ad or commercial, if you will, or promotion that we did, but it's definitely one of the most effective tools and responses we've ever received in doing one of those. So you can see that pulling at that personal piece, that emotional piece, that thought of loss, how effective that can be. The brain and the heart series, is anyone familiar? So getting back to the biggest challenge here, how do we turn an audience into an advocate? Or in this case, how do we turn people from wanting to ignore things sometimes into facing it head on? So bridging that gap between the heart and the head. So first we got to look at what about a story inspires action. And again, we just highlighted a few right there. And sometimes the most important action is the sharing. If people share a story and then it continues to be shared, this is how buzz occurs and the need and desire for action to take place. So I'd like for you to look back at that list of details you wrote down, like what it was about that story you thought of that stuck with you. And if it wasn't necessarily one that you shared with someone else, think about a story that you did share with somebody and write down what it is about that story that made you want to share it. I'll give you another minute to think on that one. What is it about a story you recently shared? It could be the same story that you thought of, but if you didn't share that one, think about a story that you did share with someone recently, and what was it about that story? Why did you feel compelled to share it? And it can be your own story, or it can be a story you heard that you then shared. Who has something they'd like to share? Anyone? Yeah.
Like an element of like disbelief. So like people always are like, did you hear about what happened to so and so, or I can't believe that this experience happened to this person. So that kind of like this disbelief or shocking, something that grabs your attention.
So attention grabbing, something that's almost out of the norm, sounds like. Definitely. Okay, great. Yeah, back there.
It's a reflection of myself, especially since I'm the one sharing it. Everyone that I'm sharing it to relates all those things back to me, and especially on the social media presence where reputation is kind of everything. It kind of you can represent yourself given the story that you're sharing. You share its values.
Very good. So again, it gets back to that resonating with you piece. It's almost something that reflects you and who you are. Yeah. Good. Yeah.
Something that gives you a sense of hope that you think might give other people hope.
Absolutely. Yeah. So encouraging others, like something that, yeah. Okay. That's great.
Excitement or drama within a story.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's almost related to the first comment. It just seems so unbelievable. But some kind of drama, for sure. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, I just the need to connect. Just the need to connect with others and to share.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very much. Yeah. Because chances are there's going to be someone else that has shared that, and so it's exactly a way for you to connect directly to another. Anyone else? Yeah.
If something has an emotional impact on me, I'm more likely to share it with people that might have a similar experience and impact.
Mm-hmm. So again, that emotional connection. If something impacts you emotionally, you're more willing to share it with someone else. For sure. Great. You are awesome. So this is sort of that next step. So that is sort of making that leap between a viewer to a participant. As soon as you've shared something, you are now no longer just an audience member. You are an active participant. You have transformed. And so that is what I think is really important, is as we are hearing stories and listening to experiences of others or viewing them, whatever it might be, to be really reflective of what is it in this moment that has changed in me, that has made me go from, wow, that was a cool story, to, I have got to tell somebody about this, you know? And that is exactly what we are trying to figure out with our work in conservation. So, like I said, very closely related to this desire to share is the desire to take action or make a decision after hearing a story. So this gets into kind of the conflict of the part of our evening. So for instance, when we hear about a friend who maybe went to a great mechanic, and it's not our mechanic, in fact, we're not really happy with our mechanic, we got a friend that went to a great one. Good price, great work. Chances are, I mean, I'm just sharing this from my experience, I flat out changed my mechanic, because I was like, wow, my friend went, I heard a great review, sounds awesome, I trust her, so I'm going to go. Or on the other side of things, if a doctor maybe gave a friend poor medical advice, that might impact our decision on seeing that doctor. So we often take stories and modify our own behavior and decisions because we trust a source. And this is where things can get a little tricky in storytelling. Do we all know what this is? This thing? Anyone? Want to yell it out? What is this guy? Who is this guy? It's a troll. Ah! We hate trolls! So as campaigns start to gain popularity, another phenomenon happens. And this is more of a modern day problem, especially with the use of social media and Facebook algorithms, thank you, that often select the type of information and stories we see. And this problem is fear-based story fabrication, or as we like to casually refer to these types of storytellers as internet trolls. So, before I jump in, I'm just going to preface this by, everything you are about to see on the next slide is false. But I would like to share with you a select few flat-out fabrications that have reached a high number of followers on our campaign Facebook page to show you another method of storytelling that we have used to diffuse and correct false stories. Often, this happens a lot in conservation. It's not just our organization. There's a lot of fear out there about conservation in general. So I think this is a really good example for you guys to see because it is often something that many conservation organizations have to combat in their communication styles. First quote, if a river is designated as wild and scenic, the entire river corridor will become a national park. They'll charge admission, build visitor centers, and the river will be completely overrun. False. My second favorite. If a river is designated wild and scenic, all the private property within the river corridor will be taken by the federal government. False. When a river is designated wild and scenic, they shut down all multi-use trails. Guess what? False. None of these things are true. But they have all been told as stories, seemingly from personal experience, on our Facebook page. So what do we do when a story is shared that is untrue and further creates barriers instead of connections in communication? Well, what I have turned to lately is comedy. Who here is familiar with Jimmy Kimmel's mean tweets? A couple? Just a couple? Oh good, this will be a treat. So, did y'all read that one real quick? I just let you read that. So in some situations, the only way to really combat fearmongers is to remove credibility. One way to do this is to poke fun at often ridiculous claims. And as I said, an example of this is mean tweets. And I will play this for you. Oh my.
negotiate getting a Whopper without pickles at Woodstock Dave. Thanks, Dave. I bet Obama likes mustard on his hot dogs because he's gross. Just found out my daughter shares his birthday with Obama. Puke. Yes. At Mom of Four Munchkins. Barack Obama dances like how his jeans look. You know, this jeans thing. This is so old. 50 years ago, come on. My mom bought new conditioner and it sucks. It isn't even conditioning my hair. I blame Obama. Barack Obama. Bro, do you even live? Well, I lifted the ban on Cuban cigars. That's worth something. Barack Obama is the Sharknado of presidents. Loud, stupid, and overhyped. Hashtag Sharknado 4. President Obama will go down as perhaps the worst president in the history of the United States. Exclamation point at real Donald Trump. At least I will go down as a president.
Okay, I wasn't trying to say I'd start up anything political here. So what were some reactions that you got from watching that? Other than it just being funny. Okay, here, let me rephrase that question. In hearing Obama read some of those comments, what did it make you feel?
The stuff didn't sound mean anymore, or like it didn't really have any value because it was just funny.
Right. Any other reflections on that type of tactic? Yeah.
Yeah, it just seems kind of ridiculous to see that, you know, that's kind of thought that somebody has.
Right. It's sort of, well, for me, and what I think, what makes this method so effective is that it softens aggression. You could read a lot of those and think, wow, this person is full of so much hate. But then you can kind of just face it like that, and it's no longer aggressive or it doesn't feel hateful anymore. It sort of breaks down those barriers between perceived enemies, if you will. I don't know if that's what others take away from that, but that's sort of what I take away from that. So, who else, or who here is also familiar with Hank Patterson, your fly fishing guy? Okay, a few. All right, cool. So, Hank Patterson, your fly fishing guide, is a satirist. He is known as a day-drinking, unprofessional, lazy fly fishing guy who insults his clients and seemingly has no idea what he's doing. In the last few years, though, Hank Patterson has gained enormous popularity within the fly fishing community as he harmlessly pokes fun, or outwardly pokes fun, at fly fishing and anglers, and those which sometimes take themselves a little too seriously, because Hank is, after all, anything but serious. So just to give you, in case you haven't had the Hank experience, here's just a little taste of Hank.
This is a movie trailer commercial thingy for Hank Patterson's How to Make an Award-Winning Fly Fishing Film Tour Film. Super hilarious movie film shot almost entirely in Alaska, on a river that Hank can't pronounce.
Is it Herron Lake? I'm here on the Uralic Lake, about to embark on a 10-day trip down the Uralic River here in Alaska. So I was trying to sleep that first night. Started thinking about all the grizzly bears. Like, I'm not going to sleep. They say the human body needs like 8 hours a night, but I haven't slept in 3 days. One of the best parts about making a fly fishing film is it's super easy. Any jackass can do it. I do it all the time. Step number 2 of making an award-winning fly fishing film. You gotta have an awesome shot list. Tell me you're getting this shot. Tell me you are getting this shot. Hey Chris, look at this. Check this out. That is not good. Everybody thinks that making a fly fishing film is this luxurious experience where all you're doing is sitting around drinking beer and martini and Rossi Spamantis, catching trophy fish and cracking jokes and just hanging out with A-list movie stars like Henry Winkler and Tom Skerritt, but it's not. So if you're in like the 3rd grade or the 4th grade or something like that, and you're thinking, oh man, when I grow up, I want to make fly fishing films. You should drop out. Just quit school because it's dumb. Everybody else is like laying in their tents, like bear food. I'm up. I'm alert.
Hank Patterson's How to Make an Award-Winning Film Tour Film. Available February 28th on Amazon Video or Vimeo On Demand.
So, for better or worse, we partnered with Hank Patterson. You might say it was a leap of faith. But after experiencing some of these trolls, and also Jimmy Kimmel happens to be a board member of American Rivers, so kind of thinking about all of this, I thought maybe this is something Hank Patterson could find funny or would want to partner on some kind of story about. And so I reached out to Hank, his real name is Travis Schwartz, and with the idea to myth bust some of the most outlandish untruths about the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act. And so together we produced the following short videos in an attempt to utilize this very different communication method to inspire people to take action. So, again, given time, I'll just do one for now. So that one's a long one. I'm going to do a short one. This one? It's long. Okay. All right.
I'm Hank Patterson, world-renowned fly fishing expert and guide. And this is Hank Patterson, the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act. Facts versus fiction. So the other day, every night last week actually, I was sitting at a bar, and there was a guy drinking an appletini 2 down from me, and he's talking to this other dude, and he's like, yeah, so if they designate a river wild and scenic, then the federal government, they come in and they steal all your land. You can't have private land on a wild and scenic river. And the other guy was like, what? And he's like, yeah. He's like, them bastards. He's like, yeah, some bitches. And then I stood up and I said, hey, fellas, I don't think that's true. And then the other dude stood up, he's big, and he's like, is too. And I was like, is not. And he's like, nuh-uh. And I was like, nuh-uh. And he's like, yeah. And I was like, no. And I said, well, how do you know that? And he was like, because my cousin Larry tweeted it last week on Twitter. And I couldn't argue with that. I mean, if Larry tweeted it, I mean, it's probably good information. So I was like, oh, okay. Anyway, I kind of drank my beer and I got out of there. Felt dumb. But then I woke up the next morning, you know, like 1 in the afternoon, and I started thinking about it, and I thought, wait a minute, maybe instead of trusting, you know, this guy and his cousin Larry, I should do a little investigative reporting of my own to come to my own conclusion. So here's an interview I did. So today I thought I'd come and hang out with my friend Darwin Stoneman, who owns a little bit of property, and ask him a few questions about his experience with the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act. So, hey. Anyway, my first question, Darwin, is, so is this is your property right here? This is all, like, this is your property? Yes? Cool. And Jake, pan over to the river. So, and this right here is a Jake pan. Yeah, there you go. So this right here is a wild and scenic designated river? Yes, it is. Wait, Jake, get back on me. Get back on me. Interesting. And so, how long has this been a wild and scenic river?
Since 1976.
Okay, and so when they designated it wild and scenic, did the federal government come down and steal all your land?
No, they didn't.
Wild. That's crazy. Let's try, Jake, try this. Just make sure I'm still in the shot. Okay, so Darwin, to be clear. Right now, I'm standing in a wild and scenic river.
Yes.
Right, and then Jake pan with me, and so this is like river ground here, and then alright, Jake, so this is like the high watermark area right here, right? Can you see me, Jake? Good, okay. So, Darwin, so this is your land here?
Yes, it is.
Okay, now Jake, keep coming with me. Come with me. Okay, hurry. Okay, so, wild and scenic river?
Yes.
Right. Hold on. Hopefully we're picking up his audio. And then your land right here.
Yes, it is.
Okay, and then, hold on. Jake, right back. Okay, now hold on. Good job. Okay, and now, hold on. Did you get that when I told him good job? Good job. Okay, now just on me, just a close up on me. That's how they do it on Dateline. Well, there you have it, folks. When they designate a river wild and scenic, the federal government does not come and steal all of your private land. It's just not true. But don't take my word for it. Hell, don't take anybody's word for it. I mean, come to your own conclusions and discover your own truths about the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act by texting by texting Wild Rivers to 555-888. Or you can go to AmericanRivers.org. I mean, you got to read. That's the furthest I've run since high school.
So we did 4 of those videos, and you can watch them all.
How many patterns?
They come out on Facebook. And I will just say, the caveat with utilizing this type of humor in disarming skeptics is it does have its own risks. You have to be careful with this, because the last thing we really want to do is make fun of people. Fears are fears. They can be real, but they can be made up. But honestly, a lot of people that do have concerns and fears really feel them, whether they are true or not. And so we just have to be really careful when we utilize this kind of humor, that we're not further alienating or isolating people that have these concerns and just further creating that barrier that we're trying to actually get rid of. And so how we do that is showing that the claims have no factual basis. But we don't do that by making fun of people or calling them out. So I just want to make that really clear. It's a little different with Jimmy Kimmel's mean tweets, as you can see the person's name right there. So I think the reason we're trying to utilize this is to just kind of disarm those concerns that people might have. I guess I'll just kind of end it with, I know we have a little bit more time to have discussion and whatnot, and certainly I could play a couple more if you guys wanted to, but I just wanted to end with, I know this lecture series was called Wild Hope, and I suppose you could call me a fearless risk taker and storyteller on the front lines of conservation, right? But really, these approaches and experiments are all that has kept me sane, truthfully, in the last couple of years, and hopeful at the same time, while we're having a lot of difficult conversations on a lot of important issues. And at the end of the day, we have to work in a way, I think, that feeds our positive energy. And for me, it's stories. It's the stories that move us. It's the stories that make us laugh. It's the stories that inspire us to take action and to share. So I hope that this perspective gave you all some food for thought. I as you think about what motivates you to share stories and take action on the issues you care about. And thanks for listening.
Questions, comments for Kascie?
Yes.
So, you make your own films then, you yourself?
Yes. I have been focusing on some video testimonies, mostly for our Facebook page. And I didn't actually share those because I am quite amateur. But you guys can definitely go look at them if you want. I've been interviewing people like 1-2 minutes about living and working on wild and scenic rivers and what it means to them. And so, yeah, I am still trying to dabble in it and do some storytelling myself through film. Yeah. Any other questions? How about front here and then you, I'm sure.
So there's some tact to having your story being told is in eliciting certain emotions to create a reaction. Does your nonprofit have anything that after that reaction happens to where they might take action to help benefit the river? Is there anything that the company does proactively then in the loop about current events and other rivers that they might also care about?
Absolutely. That's a big part of it. It almost takes as much time as putting the message out there through stories, then keeping track of those individuals that have taken action and continuing to cultivate interest with them and some kind of further meaning for them to stay involved. So absolutely, we continue to send email updates, and although it's a very fine line to walk too, because you don't want to bombard people and overwhelm them. So it's a delicate dance, but absolutely we make every effort to do that.
I've recently become aware of endangered rivers such as the Colorado and the Eel down in California and overcrowding. My question is, what rivers in Montana would you say are having the biggest problem with overcrowding, and are there endangered rivers in Montana?
So when we do, like for instance at American Rivers, we actually have something called our Most Endangered Rivers Report. And it's not typically related to anything like overcrowding. It's mostly related to actions that are going to be taken, whether it's proposed mines or some kind of contamination or waste problem. It's typically something very specific, direct like that. We definitely do engage in processes that speak to issues like overcrowding. For instance, here in Montana, it's a little difficult. We only have 4 designated wild and scenic rivers as it is. So, for instance, up on the Flathead, they're engaging in a comprehensive river management planning process right now, and overcrowding, overuse, recreation, and responsible recreation are a key component to that plan. So, we definitely engage in those conversations and are aware of that as an issue. And I would say, just because those rivers have that planning process in place, we know there's data to support when there are issues like overcrowding, and I know that visitation on those rivers in particular has definitely increased over the generations. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that we pay attention to and try to stay on top of and be aware of, yeah, for sure. But, yeah, as far as other rivers in particular that I could call out as being endangered really due to overpressure. I mean, I think we all probably, some of us know about certain issues that come up. I mean, the Yellowstone River has experienced a lot of pressure in recent years. The Smith River, there's always concern there as well. I think that's why the Smith also has a permitted system whereby not as many people can get on the river and utilize it on a daily basis. So I definitely think that's going to happen more and more in Montana for sure. Yeah.
So, who is like your, I guess like two questions. Like, who is your main opposition, and then like who are you like your audience that you're like looking to? Is it you were talking about? bigger companies that are proposing mines or doing something like today, whatever? Is it landowners that have traditional use practices that you're coming in conflict with? And then I guess who are you trying to, like, is it all just like kind of like legislation and like trying to just get people to write to their lawmakers?
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, I'll start with what it is first and who we're trying to reach. So the end goal is to get legislation introduced at the federal level, because it is federal legislation, so getting our senators, Tester Daines, Congressman Gianforte, to introduce legislation at the federal level that would designate a whole suite of rivers in Montana under the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act. And you can go to our website, actually, if you are really interested in kind of dissecting that legislation. We have it online. It's at healthyriversnt.org, and you can actually click on every single river segment we're looking at. It shows the mileage, it shows the values. You can even endorse our proposal right there, which essentially is like signing our petition. And who we're reaching out to is really every Montanan that cares about river health, water quality, water security. A lot of our drinking water comes from surface water. It's how we irrigate our ag and ranch land. And for a lot of people, it's our recreation heritage. And it supports an enormous economy. A $7 billion economy in the state of Montana is outdoor recreation. So I say that largely. That's our outdoor recreation economy. It's not all attached to rivers necessarily, but a big portion of it is. And so our audience is really anybody that's connected to that in any of those ways, and that would care about that. And as it turns out in Montana, that's a majority of the people that live in Montana. So when we come to combating, this opposition, honestly, we don't have any formalized opposition right now. Then again, we haven't had the legislation introduced. I'm sure once we get to that point where we've got legislation on the table, is typically when then you get that counter movement against things, typically. That being said, we can assume that extractive industry is going to be of opposition. Hydro damming and development interests are definitely an opposition, because if a river is doesn't wild and scenic, no dams, no degradation of water quality, so it's really hard to do certain extractive practices that would harm water quality. And I would say that definitely people who have a fear of the federal government is something that comes up. And I think that's why you see those sorts of fears laid out, like the federal government will come and take private land or things like that. There's a lot of fear around that because I think there's a general fear and distrust of government. And so that is definitely a message we try to assuage, if you will, because it's not a concern, but it's definitely a fundamental concern that comes up. Did that?
Yeah.
I think on the same lines as what you were just saying, in trying to address those concerns from people coming from that rural or traditional practice backgrounds, like I think it was I-186, most recently got pretty well spanked because of mining industry money. Do you guys imagine yourselves coming up against that with Black Butte and the Smith? And I think it's Black Butte at the top of mind going in there. And also with that local economy, which is still kind of stuck in that good old days and how it used to be. And they don't, I think we can all understand that they use that water and need that water, but at the same time they're seeing such a economic hardship that they're wanting to jump on board with anything with dollar sign, and they're not seeing that dollar sign so much from that outdoor recreation.
Right. Or necessarily seeing the short-lived
Yeah.
dollars.
Yeah, I guess there's They want the instant gratification.
Yeah, for sure. The short answer is yes, of course. Absolutely. Like, that's a concern. Definitely, our nonprofit interests come to the table typically with far less finances to throw at those sort of outreach strategies. It's definitely a part of the ballot initiative. I mean, we didn't have nearly enough as well to put towards that. There's definitely some more outreach that could have been done too.
Yeah, I agree.
But so I do think that is something we're concerned about, and I don't really have a good answer for it. It's just something that is definitely in the back of our minds all the time, really.
What was the response to the Hank Patterson video here?
Thank you. I was going to mention that. So we hadn't put any advertising into it, and it was viewed by 8,000 people in the first day. And so if you saw at the end there, we're trying out this new kind of text action approach. Again, just trying to make it as easy as possible for folks to engage, even just through their smartphone. So within 24 hours after that, we got 189 text actions. So it's grown since then. I think we've had about 40, 50, and then it tapered off. That's about as good as really any video I've ever posted. So I assume a lot of that is because of the Hank Patterson following. But I was pretty pleased with that response. So we're going to continue to roll out the videos every couple weeks. There are 4 of them. And then we'll probably look at maybe putting a little bit of money into advertising or pushing them to more audiences so people can take action. So, yeah.
Who are you thinking was the audience for the
Well, who do you think the audience is?
Well, I'm just thinking of, you were talking about, like, people who have traditional land use practices. I mean, a lot of them don't be told that they're wrong, and a lot of them don't like a dude being really smart about it, So, I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
And it's not that audience, and that's why. It is the angler community. And the reason that we chose those types of concerns and fears is that those tend to gain a lot of popularity even within the angling community, as we've noticed. And there are followers, but they're also Hank's followers. So the strategy there was, let's get this comedic approach out to his choir, if you will. The people that listen to him, the people that find him humorous, the people that kind of take his word for it, even though he says, don't take my word for it. But they do. And so it's really that, and if you look at the demographic of people that follow him, it's actually a very moderate demographic, politically, that is. And so we felt like this was a way for us to reach the people that we assume inherently would support wild and scenic and river protection because of maybe their outdoor recreation interests, but that maybe don't really interact with a lot of conservation org or our conservation org. And so this would be a way to kind of say, oh, that's kind of funny. I want to learn more about that. So this is a total experiment. And it might flop, caveat. Because you're right. I think the idea, the goal wasn't to change the minds of those people necessarily that have those fears. It was to bring around a new audience of people that we assume would support the cause, but would be interested in it through a medium they were familiar with. So, for what it's worth. Anyone else?
All right, well, thank you, Kascie. Yeah.